You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Gold, crude oil, corn, soybeans, and more. With so many tradable products, the futures options market can be an intimidating place. How can you possibly keep track of the latest trading developments across so many different products? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Welcome to This Week in Futures Options, the program designed to help active futures options traders stay on top of this ever-changing marketplace. Each week, we'll break down the top trades, hot products, volatility explosions, and much more. This Week in Futures Options streams live, so be sure to check out our live stream via the Mixlr app. That's MIXLR. Or join our live chat room at mixlr.com/options-insider. Whether you're an experienced veteran or a newcomer looking to separate the wheat from the lean hogs, This Week in Futures Options has the information you can't find anywhere else. This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This Week in Futures Options is also brought to you by FTSE Russell, a leading global provider of benchmarks, analytics, and data solutions. For more information, please visit ftserussell.com, cboe.com, and cmegroup.com. And now, get ready to break down the latest futures options trading activity. It's time for This Week in Futures Options.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back to kick off the new year here in TWIFO. This Week in Futures Options. What does the new year hold in store for us out there on the futures options front? Maybe what's going to happen in energy or ags or rates or any of the complexes we break down here on the show. Equities, volatility, all of the above, and a whole bunch more. Looking forward to a great year of TWIFO ahead of us. Of course, my name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-compelling, at least we tend to think so, Options Insider Radio Network. Pleased to see so many of you joining us here, not just for the on-demand, but, of course, jumping in to the Secret Club there at the end of last year, beginning of this year. We welcome all of you. And, of course, if you listen, however you listen live after the fact, make sure you get those questions in. We do love to hear from all of you guys and gals out there. If you're on the after-the-fact side, we did see a lot of people joining the show throughout the year, but especially towards the end of last year as well. It was just a lot of interest across all of our shows, including TWIFO. So a lot of people are new to the world of futures options and finding their way through this marketplace. So if you like what you hear, keep putting ratings and reviews out there wherever you get the show, and your Apple Podcast, your Spotify, your Google. It does help folks continue to find a path to the content we're putting out there. We're trying to keep these people informed and engaged, and so hopefully they can hang out and keep trading options for many years to come. And in the past, we've seen huge waves of new entrants into the options markets, and then many of them have been blown out or siphoned off or lost interest because they didn't really know how to trade them properly. So we're trying to keep these new folks engaged and teach them the proper way to trade options so everyone can be around for the long term. That's the goal at the end of the day. Let's see who's around to join me to kick off the new year this week here on TWIFO, and I am pleased to say we are joined once again in the CME and FTSE Russell hot seat by our old friend, Mr. Russell Rhoads, the once, future, and dare I say it, present Dr. Vix. Mr. Rhoads, welcome back to the program. Is it true? Are you now officially dubbed Dr. Vix, sir?
I am officially dubbed Dr. Rhoads. I don't know about Dr. Vix yet. Maybe I should take that one.
You should run with that. I've already dubbed you that, so therefore It's pretty much official.
Well, when you do it, it sticks for life.
You know, I am pretty much the dispenser of nicknames throughout the options landscape. So
you most definitely are.
Once I give you a moniker.
I like the present doctor as opposed to the maybe someday he'll finish this thing.
But once in future, Dr. Vix has been your name for a long time. It's going to be hard to mess with that. So we'll start sprinkling in the present. Does it feel good to be done? Are you excited?
I feel like one of the other professors at Kelley asked me if I felt like a different person, and yeah, I actually do. I feel like I had something hanging over my head for 5 years, and now I don't. So
bigger, smarter,
much more relaxed,
more aggressive. The new Russell Rhoads for 2022.
Yeah. I'm a good husband and father now.
Oh, there we go. That's a big change. So I'm sure your family will be very pleased to hear that there, sir. Well, before we go down some dark roads, it's our first show of the new year. It's the first time you've joined us here in the new year. So let's start there, Mr. Rhoads. Obviously last year, an insane year by any metric. I just broke down the numbers for the equity options industry on our last show, threatening 10 billion contracts. I'll get into some numbers from CME in a little bit here as well. But first, obviously it was an insane year. What stands out for you as you look back on the futures options maelstrom of 2021, sir?
Well, one thing that's kind of standing out from CME Group, it's not necessarily it's more of a futures than an options thing, but we are supposed to be going through this transition where we don't pay attention to LIBOR anymore and we get a replacement. And CME was early to the game with SOFR. And the SOFR volumes, and that's the secured overnight financing rate, which is more of a market-based replacement for LIBOR, which had its own little problems. The volume on that thing, they're pretty strong. So it looks like maybe SOFR is going to win the day as at least a U.S. LIBOR replacement. Also, just seeing equity index options, the options on equity futures, as opposed to the index options like at my old employer. The volume there has just been absolutely incredible. And you've got to assume that retail has become more comfortable using options on futures. And I think that's because maybe 3 or 4 years ago, CME decided to play the long game and really educate people on their versions of options. And you're seeing it pay off now.
Seeing it pay off, indeed. You mentioned SOFR, actually. CME putting out some of their numbers for the year right before showtime here. Let's hit on a couple. You mentioned the SOFR, so I guess we'll start there. Overall, record SOFR ADV, this is for the annual numbers now, up 212% to 158,000 by the end of the year. Overall ADV at CME for the year, up about 3%. Nearly 20 million contracts, about 19.6 million. Going out on the curve a little bit, the Ultra 10-year looking pretty good as well. The ADV for the year up 46% to 372,000 contracts. The E-mini NASDAQ 100 getting back to the equity option space, up 35%, the ADV to 949,000. That's not playing around out there. And Bitcoin ADV up 13% to about 10,000. Now, obviously, they launched a few micros along the way in there. So that's overall going to help the number of contracts that are going up. So that ADV is going to grow because of that, obviously. But still, overall, multiple new products. It seemed like a lifetime ago that they added the Bitcoin options. A lot of new products hitting the crypto tape at CME. Then, of course, we had Ether following after that. And then the micro Ether futures just about exactly a month ago, actually. It was December 6th, so exactly a month ago. So a lot getting into the hopper there at CME on the crypto side. How did they end up the year? By the way, how did how did Q4 compare over there at CME? Let's see, ADV for Q4 up 26%. I'm not sure if that's year over year, if that's compared to Q3. I'll have to look in and see. Interest rate ADV up 56%. And SOFR, as you mentioned, up 301% just in Q4. Energy ADV up 16% to about 2.3 million contracts. Equity index ADV up 15% to about 6 million. And overall options ADV in Q4 up get this, listeners, 58 freaking percent to a 3.7 million contract. So a lot of paper popping off out there. Speaking of things popping off last year, Mr. Rhoads, we've been doing this all week on a lot of our other shows. It seems like an appropriate time to do it now. What say you, sir, before we dive into this week's action? We break down some of the action from last year, do, let's say, a top 10 episodes of 2021 countdown. What say you, sir?
I say, as long as I was on every single one, I'm on board.
It's a good question. I don't have the actual guest hosts for these. That'd be a fun thing to do as well. See how many of these you are on as we dive right on into our top 10 episodes for 2021. All right, there it is. Can't do that without a little bit of music out there. All right, let's get to it, listeners. Top 10 episodes of 2021. You know what? If I have time, maybe I'll have a chance to see. No guarantees. That's a lot of digging. But I'll see if I can pull up what was going on each of these episodes. Let's start off our number 10 episode for the year, listeners. And it's interesting. We've seen a lot of different aggregations. I almost want to say of liquidity, but obviously it's of shows. Aggregations of shows on different programs. Some were clumped earlier in the year for the top episodes because there was all about the meme stock stuff. We just did the option block. That one was kind of all over the place. That was really fun to see out there as well. And for TWIFO, it seems like actually the shows were pretty clumped later in the year, which is fascinating to show kind of the uptick in audience throughout the year, and it continued all the way into the end of the year because our number 10 episode for last year, listeners, was episode 280, the penultimate futures options palooza. It was on December 23rd, so obviously our second to last episode of last year. I was joined, Mr. Rhoads asking who our co-hosts are. I was joined on that episode by Uncle Mike himself, Uncle Mike Tusaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, and we talked about a lot of different things on that show. Talked rates, talked metals, talked equities, ags, and a whole bunch of other things out there on the show. Because Uncle Mike, he likes rates, and he likes metals, and he likes equities. So you know those are going to make it on the show whenever he's on. So there you go. Our second to last show for the year, making it to the top 10. Mr. Rhoads, what do you think about this concentration towards the latter portion of the year, sir?
It matches up. You know, you were throwing those CME numbers out, and I had them in front of me, so I could kind of see a pattern. The fourth quarter average daily volume for a lot of the CME stuff is higher than their average daily volume for the year. So I think there's a correlation by causation with more and more people tuning into this program and more trading going on in the CME complex.
I was just going to say, you might think it's CME volume driving interest. No, sir. It is the other way around. Folks listening to this show and then diving deep into CME markets. Hey, we're driving all that SOFR paper. I can't shut up about SOFR, so you know me. Can't shut up about SOFR. All right. Let's move on to the number 9 on our list, episode 279. So right before this is a lot of recent episodes here, which is fascinating, entitled Running with Scissors. I don't even need to look to know this is the one we just did with Derek Salmon because he made that joke about running with scissors, and we joked about my favorite clip from Cheers where Frasier is running with scissors. I still laugh at that. It's how many decades old now? But yes, that was our kind of semi-annual hit with Derek. He's, of course, the head of options over there and a lot of other things at CME. And so he kind of gave us a nice overview for the year. Some of the trends and developments that we just talked about, he broke down in a lot more detail out there. So there you go, Mr. Rhoads. Number 9, 279. So far, we're 2 for 2 on episodes that don't include you. Is there a trend here, sir?
There's most definitely a trend.
We'll see if we can.
There's one of them I'm going to take a little bit of credit for.
I wonder which one this might be. We'll get to that in a second. All right, let's go next now. Let's go to next. Number 8. We're kind of going in a row here. 280, 279, 278 is number 8 here. The Micro ETH launch, BITO update, energy breakdown, and more from December 10th. Take a guess when we did that one, listeners. That was right on December 6th when these Micro ETH contracts launched. Another buddy from CME, Mr. Tim McCourt, was the guest on that because he oversees all things crypto over there, as well as equities over there at CME. And so it was an interesting one to get into with him. And, of course, we recorded that a little bit off schedule because we wanted to get it in around the launch date for those products. Glad to see you folks liked it. BITO, obviously, it was a hot one as well. out there. So Mr. Rhoads, so far we're 3 for 3, no Russell Rhoads. And also we have a lot of different products out there, including a lot of crypto and other things. But again, the trend holds, no Russell Rhoads, 3 for 3, sir.
Oh, gosh. It hurts. It's okay. It's okay. I'm coming up.
This next one may hurt more because you're in the title, but yet not. Number 7.
Resurging.
Number 7 for the year. You were resurgent because it was episode 274. You were resurgent Russell, rip-roaring Nat Gas, and raucous rates. Can you tell our producers like a little bit of alliteration, listeners? It was November 4th. We had Carly Garner as our guest, who actually just did a great hit this week in our Pro Q&A hot seat. So if you're in the Secret Club, I know a lot of you enjoyed that. You can check it out if you missed it on the Pro podcast feed. If you're not in the Secret Club, what the hell are you waiting for? A lot of great stuff, and we talked a lot about futures options this week. That's Carly's thing. She's written a bunch of books about it, so that was a great one as well. So she joined us on that show November 4th. Nat Gas, if you know her, listen to her hits there. She's talked a lot about Nat Gas. She loves upside bullish risk reversals in Nat Gas was a big play. Also, call ladders, which can be a little bit dicey in Nat Gas because it was exploding. Mr. Rhoads, first off, here we are, 4 for 4, no Russell Rhoads. B, I know you like Carly, so you're probably happy that she made it on our top 10.
I'm taking you and I off the air. I said, have you ever thought about Carly Garner? And then all of a sudden, I see her bumping me out of my opportunities to be on your show. That's okay.
She takes your spot in the top 10.
She is awesome. She is absolutely awesome.
Are you a fan
I don't recommend to anybody for anything.
Are you a fan of call ladders, sir, in futures options?
I am not necessarily. I've never traded a call ladder, but I will. I'll put it on my bucket list of things to do in 2020.
It is a weird thing because you're right. When we used to trade on the SIBO and whatever equities and indices, we had it beat into our brain. No short units, right? And then on the futures options side, they just love the ladders, which, of course, listeners, is not really a vertical. It's more of like buying one and selling two or maybe three on different strikes. And so, as you can tell, you have a lot of short units, so you got to have a pretty deft hand on the get out of Dodge quick button if you're trading those. But intriguing stuff. We talked about those this week on her appearance, and we talked about them a little bit on that episode 274 as well for November 4th there, our number 7 episode from last year. All right, let's go to number 6. Again, we're going in almost in order. 273. This was from October 29th. This was volatile nat gas, confusing corn, and much more with our old buddy Dan Gramza. It wouldn't be a top 10 for the year without having Mr. Gramza in there. I've never met someone who you could just say, hey, what do you think about XYZ product? And he can go on about it for 20 minutes with intelligence and insight. So Dan is a special one. He's a great one. Glad to see him on the list. Mr. Rhoads, here we are now, number 6. And so far, the trend continues. Dan Gramza kicking you out of the top 10 this time, sir.
That's you know what? If you're gonna be usurped, I don't even know if that's the right word. Dan Gramza, and he is. I have a great Dan Gramza story, which is too long for right now, but he is one of the nicest people in our industry, and smartest, like you said, and a wealth of knowledge.
He might be one of the nicest guys I've encountered in this business. A business not known for having a ton of nice people in it, but he definitely stands out there. And I'm glad to see he's there at number 6. Will he make a return appearance? Will Russell ever make it in? The drama continues. Now we're getting to it, listen. Now we're getting to the top 5. Episode 5 on our top 10 countdown, I should say number 5 on our top 10 countdown, is TWIFO 270. Once again, Russell's name is in the title, and he is nowhere to be found. It was the Russell 2000 Squid Game episode from October 7th. Obviously, back then, Squid Game was blowing up the Netflix charts. Everyone was talking about it. We were talking about it here on the show as well. Our guest, not Mr. Rhoads, but actually Tim McCourt, to talk about all things going on the equity front, the E-mini futures and options, blowing the doors off out there. I should say the micro E-mini, really, blowing the doors off there. Also, the addition for Russell 2000, what's going on with them. So a lot was going on there, and I'm sure maybe the Squid Game in the title probably helped a little bit as well to boost it to the number 5. Mr. Rhoads, are you a fan of Squid Game, A? And B, how do you feel now that we're all the way up to number 5 and still no you, sir?
I watched Squid Game, and this drives my family nuts. I watched it doing the drive back and forth to Indiana.
You watched it while driving?
Yeah.
Let me introduce you
to
like
such a dull, flat, boring drive that I've done a lot of my binge watching on the expressway. Don't tell anybody.
Wow. Let me introduce you to things like podcasts or maybe audiobooks, things that don't involve a visual component. Might be better for your long-term health.
I do both. You know what? I actually listen to a lot of TWIFO episodes. That's why mine are not showing up on the list.
Because you don't listen to yours. There you go.
Because I'm listening to all of these on my drive back and forth.
You're listening to Dan Gramza like 10 times because, we all do that.
Oh, my God, yes.
The man can dispense wisdom for days. So there we go. All the way at number 5. Listeners, will he make it? Did we bring him on the show today just to mock him? We'll find out. Number 4, here we go. Listen, number 4, episode 276. Now we're jumping to November 19th, called No Happy Price for Crude Oil. And again, that's from November 19th. Once again, Mr. Dan Gramza making a double appearance on the top 10 for last year. Is there a more worthy contender out there? I don't think so. Mr. Dan Gramza, a good one. Again, we talked a lot about crude. That was on the heels of a lot of that price action. To the upside, north threatening beyond the 80, back down again, threatening 70 again. Was an interesting time for crude. And Mr. Rhoads, here we are all the way through to number 4. Your buddy Dan Gramza coming on again. Glad to see you're driving his episodes up the list. But once again, no you, sir.
No, well, but you know what? The Olympics are coming up next month. And 4th place does not get you on the podium. But 1st, 2nd, or 3rd might.
Are you throwing some shade, sir? Are you perhaps...
I'm throwing just a tad of shade there.
Are you perhaps hinting?
Because I know what's next.
Are you perhaps hinting at what may be to come? Let's see. Can he make it onto the list at all, listener? Here we go. Number 3, episode 272, Crypto Craziness from October 21st. And as someone has written in the notes, listeners, me, all in caps and exclamation points. Yes, Mr. Rhoads, you were the guest on that episode. I wonder if the popularity was due as much to you being on or to the title invoking crypto. What do you think?
I have a really back in the day when I was at SIBO, there was a sell side analyst, and they did a little experiment with a weekly report that he does. They didn't put VIX in one title, and they put it in the next title, and their clicks went up by 50%. And I think crypto does the exact same thing. When you look at this list, I think there's 2 or 3 crypto ones on here that it didn't make the top one, but I can already see the next one has crypto in it as well.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the speaker. I think it's the topic on that one.
I used to joke all the time, every article we post on the site, we should put, VIX or maybe Tesla in it. Now I guess you have to add crypto to that list, and they will explode. So there you go. Whether it was you or the crypto love, either way, Mr. Rhoads, you did it. You made it into the top 10 of last year. You should pat yourself. So now your year is really complete. You got your doctorate, and you made it into the top 10. You can kind of retire for the rest of the year, sir.
I got a bronze.
You made the bronze. Let's see who got the gold out here. Episode 275. This was from November 11th of last year. It had Todd Colvin on there as a guest. So coming in there, we talked on that episode. We had rates, metals, ags, crypto, there it is in the title again, and more. So kind of one of those all over the place. I know Todd's a big rates guy, so not surprising that we spent a lot of time on rates that episode, but also the metals. They kind of go hand in hand. People like rates tend to like themselves some metals. And then ags, bit of a left field one there. Crypto all over the place, and a whole bunch more on that episode. Mr. Rhoads, you didn't make it, but you made the bronze. And here we are, episode 2 on our list, or number 2, I should say, on our list. And once again, crypto. Maybe there's something to it, Mr. Rhoads.
Yeah. No, I think that definitely has something to do with the title. But I'm trying to figure out why number 1 is number 1.
Yes. Well, maybe it is the guest. It's our other. We have 2 returning offenders on the. I can't tell them this, so I'll give them a big head now. But our number 1 episode for last year, listeners, was episode 271, The Shiny Stuff, Tsunami of Equities, and more, from October 15th, with none other than Uncle Mike Tusaw himself as our guest. Uncle Mike was at the bottom of our list at number 10, and at the top of it at number 1. I think he only came on twice last year, and he was in the top 10 for both of those. So there we go. I guess a feather in his cap. Obviously, Uncle Mike's on. We're going to talk equities. Obviously, we're going to talk metals. Probably got some rates on that episode as well. So, Mr. Rhoads, metals and equities, taking it with Uncle Mike, sir. What say you?
I again, somebody that I am not embarrassed to lose to at all. the shiny stuff. Tsunami. Maybe I need to. If we did a tsunami of crypto craziness, I would win.
Are you suggesting a title for this episode, sir? Tsunami of crypto crazy. Let's see if one of the first episodes of the year can win for next year. That would be an impressive feat. We got a whole year ahead of us.
I think that's how it would work. There's more opportunity. I'm just going to keep tweeting a link to this every week so I can win next
Usually
year.
You're right. Usually episodes early in the year have a bit of a boost in the podcast medium because obviously more listeners discover the show as the year goes on. They go back and download the old stuff, so they have more time to generate downloads. So that's usually how it tends to work, but this show bucking that trend, sir.
I think that says a lot about 2022.
Yes.
Just in a lot of, if you do look at the titles, several of them have something about interest rates in them as well, especially when we get to the December ones. I thought I saw that in there in a couple of places. And then also that's an area that really saw consistent, strong volume growth throughout the year was the interest rate complex. And, that's one that I always try to steer you to when I'm on here. I'm not trying to do that. I just think that probably is a good reason for all your best shows being in the fourth quarter.
That could very well be. Maybe also the fact that Mr. Rhoads wasn't around Q4 a lot. Maybe I'm just putting that out there too. We'll see. We'll see. But you made the top 3, so nothing to sneeze at. As we keep on rolling, it is time, listeners, for the movers and shakers.
It's time to find out what's rallying on the light side and falling to the dark side at CME Group this week. It's time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Movers and Shakers. We break down what's moving to the upside and to the downside there at CME this week. Mr. Rhoads, you'll be happy to know our chat is behind you today. We got Unlimited in the chat saying, who doesn't binge their Netflix shows while driving? So apparently you're not alone, A, and B, it sounds like you and Mr. Unlimited are not going to be long for this earth, sir.
It's the middle of Indiana. There's nothing to hit. There's nothing there. It's just me.
When I wake up next week and I see the headlines, Dr. Vicks just explodes cow in middle of Indiana, I won't be surprised.
Swerving toward the cow.
Yes.
Let's see what happens here.
Yes, swerving towards the cow. All right, Mr. Rhoads, you know what time it is, sir. Let us begin our dance for the first time here. In 2022, where should we look, sir, first? To the light side or to the dark side?
Well, there's not a lot on the light side, so let's do the light side and get it out of the way. Plus, I like the top 2 on the light side. They're fun markets.
You know what? Since you took a bronze medal last year, why don't I let you do the honors? I always read off the winners and the movers and shakers. Why don't you do it? Why don't you run through our light side? See if you can add some gravitas to it for us.
Let's see if I can actually do this. The reason I like the light side, I'm totally fixated on inflation, and I think I don't think we're out of the woods yet, which I think everybody else figured out yesterday. But number 5, something that is a source of protein. And you could have even had for Thanksgiving. They were talking about making fake turkeys out of soybeans. And that was up 3.48% last week. And the very closely tied to soybean oil was up a little bit more, up 5.19%. I think not a big surprise. In fact, if you'd asked me to guess, I would have guessed number 3 would have been the number 1. But natural gas, we know there are lots of geopolitical issues that are going on around the world right now. And basically, Mr. Putin is turning off the gas. It was up 8.5%, just over 8.5% last week. Something that you never think about, but I think all of us have some sort of exposure to one way or another. Iron ore up 10.6%. And I know iron ore doesn't get a lot of love in the United States. That's one of the most actively traded futures contracts over in Asia, where they need steel for everything. And then my babies are not getting a full glass of milk these days when they have their cookies and milk before bed, because class 3 milk up 11.5% last week.
Well done, sir.
Thank God we don't have to run our cars on milk.
Well done, sir. It's like you earned a bronze medal in this or something over the course of the last year. In fact, you did so well. You think you can handle the dark side as well?
Oh, let me try to find the dark side here. Oh, my goodness gracious. But one thing I do, all of those are, when we get to the dark side, it's a bunch of financials in one thing that might contribute to higher prices at the grocery store. But I don't think those are very encouraging numbers if you think they're going to be able to put a cap on inflation going into this year. On the other side, one of my 3 favorite indexes, the E-mini NASDAQ 100 down 4.44%. What is SRW for wheat?
What is it? That's the Chicago wheat.
That's the Chicago. Okay, because the other one says KC. So Chicago wheat was down 4.46%, and KC wheat down just over 5.25%. So we're not as bad as Kansas City. We can't say that in like the football arena, but we can say that we're kind of king of the geeks with respect to wheat this past week.
Barbecue arena pretty good in KC now. We got them in most other things, but in football and barbecue, they may have us.
They've got us. Well, barbecue, I'm a Memphian, but that's another discussion. But in the financial side, Bitcoin down 9.43%. Looks like my kids are going to be going to college at DePage instead of Harvard. And then finally, because their whole college savings is in Bitcoin. And then finally, Eurodollars down one of my favorite numbers, 11.11%. Which pretty interesting. But I guess I would have almost expected a little bit more in the interest rate spot just because we got such a kind of what appears to be a surprise to the markets yesterday from the FOMC.
Yesterday we saw some sell-off. Mixed day out there today. Mr. Rhoads, well done. Spoken like a true bronze medalist, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
And come on every week and just do the light side, dark side.
We should do that. That'd be fun. The once and future and indeed present Dr. Vic's movers and shakers list.
So
Brought to you
just a little levity and talk about the dark, kind of like a weatherman.
I like it, but hopefully your accuracy is
easy stuff.
Your accuracy is a little bit higher than your average weatherman out there. All right, so where should we begin our journey this week, sir?
I'm going to let you pick. Since you usually do the list and then you ask me to pick, so I'm turning roles on you.
Oh, interesting. Well, since you are on, and since we do call you the once and future Dr. Vic's, perhaps we will hang our hat out there first, listeners. It is time to talk about some equities.
It's time to explore the volatility swings, skew changes, and hot options trades in your favorite indices. It's time to talk equities.
All right, everybody, welcome to the equities. You guys know where to go to follow along with these reports anytime you want out there, completely for free. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO, or /TWIO. Both of those the places to go to begin your journey here to the dark side. We're going to hang out in equities, so go to that asset class, I should say, drop down, listeners. Scroll down a few past ags and energy to equity indices. Then I think we'll hang out first in the NASDAQ because it is our number 5 mover and shaker to the dark side. And don't get a chance to talk about the NASDAQ 100 that often. Before we do that, though, let me set the table here from an overall vol perspective. You can't really talk equities without talking vol, listeners. Coming into showtime, the vol has been ticking up to start the year here. RVX, not quite at the 30 handle again, but getting up there. 27 to kick off the show. It's up about 3.25 points from where it was this time last show. VIX Cash threatening the 20 handle, 1980 when we kicked off the show, up a little over 3 points as well. So both RVX and VIX, so small cap vol and large cap vol, both moving a little over 3 points this week. So not going to see a huge move in that spread as a result. VVIX back up to about 117.25 actually. That puts it up a little over 8, about 8.5, 8.6 points from last week. We were just talking about maybe can VVIX, the way it was starting the year, maybe it seemed like it might start trending to finally break 100 again. Nope. Not heading there right now. Vol Q, the vol of the NASDAQ 100. You know, NASDAQ's been having some troubles of late. Almost at 23 when we kicked off the show, 2290. That puts it up a little over 5, about 5.15 from this time last week. It puts that VIX to RVX, so the small cap to large cap spread pretty much about the same as last week. It came in about 0.2 points, which again is the difference between the movements of the two. And it's at about 7.25. So that's still a really wide spread between small cap and large cap vol, which is interesting. VIX to vol Q starting to get more reasonable again, around 3 points. There was a week there where they were the same, which was very strange. Now, VIX to vol Q, that spread widening out a little over 2 points, about 2.1 points, getting back to about 3.1, which is a little bit more of a, dare I say it, a normal range for that. Mr. Rhoads, before we dive into what's lighting it up this week, obviously when you're not talking to me, you spend a lot of your days looking at all things equity volatility. What really resonated for you from the insane year that was 2021 from an equity vol perspective, sir?
Well, not necessarily. I'm actually going to talk about this week and what happened just the past couple of days. I was kind of surprised that with the volatility spikes in 2021, we never really got an instance where VIX was higher than RVX. I was looking at that. I would have guessed we would have had at least a couple of days where VIX went to a premium. But and also when I look at that, I use VIX Mo instead of VIX. Just because that's the older calculation of VIX, and it's the same calculation.
RVX is that's right. RVX is the old one. You're right.
So if regular old VIX was at a premium to RVX, I missed it because I look at it a little different. Vol Q managed to remain at more of a premium than I would have expected last year, but with the relative to performance of the two indexes. But you're starting to see Vol Q at the premium that it's at right now is a little surprising this early in January. That spread does start to widen out when during earnings months. And in fact, the NASDAQ has been up the last 5 Januaries in a row, and Vol Q rose 3 of those 5 Januaries. That's just another instance of that earnings season effect on Vol Q. The way that it ran up yesterday relative to VIX and RVX with the sell-off in the equity markets, I felt like that was an indication that you probably want to continue to avoid tech for a while, which makes sense in a higher interest rate environment. What was really had me scratching my head was RVX maintained its spread relative to VIX on a sell-off day, and that's not normal. Normally, when we get when we get a little headline grabbing, and it only takes about a 2% sell-off in the indexes to get a headline. Now, when you start to see that, VIX will go up more than RVX, but they seem to move in sync yesterday, and I think that's really the excess weighting of tech for the S&P 500 versus the Russell 2000, which is more heavily weighted in financials and healthcare. And if you're worried about inflation in the U.S., you probably want to be more worried or more concerned about domestic stocks versus stocks that have international exposure, and that may be why RVX is maintaining a wider spread relative to VIX than I would have expected.
That is a good point. What I expect from Dr. VIX about the old school RVX versus VIX Mo, because you're right, RVX was launched quite some time ago, listeners, and since then they've made multiple iterations and tweaks to the VIX methodology. They've incorporated weeklies and things like that. They've adjusted how they calculate the skew. RVX still going with that old school methodology. They haven't really updated that, which may be a sign that that they're not planning on relaunching RVX anytime soon, even though I really wish they would. I mean, the vol of how much small caps have moved. I mean, it's been the product to watch, certainly for the latter portion of this past year, and yet for whatever reason, not planning on relaunching the vol products on there. But I mentioned we're going to look at NASDAQ 100. It is our number 5, actually, to the dark side this week, off 4.44%. So go into that drop down, listeners. Get into equities. Go over to the E-mini NASDAQ 100. If you're wondering how much paper does it do, it's no E-mini S&P 500, but it does decent paper, about 83,000 contracts on the tape right now. And as most equities are wont to do, 36% of that is going in the contract that expires in one day. So we're going to scroll down a little bit. So let's go out. Let's see. Where's the next most active month? Let's get 15% of the paper went up in the week 3 Jan contract that has exactly 15 days to go. So we're going to hang out there right at our frame of reference, our cutoff point. By the way, if you're wondering, listeners, coming into showtime, the NASDAQ at 15,845. They're off about almost 3% just since Monday. So obviously a lot of that sell-off coming recently here. The vol out there, we mentioned the vol Q coming into showtime is at almost a 22.90. The vol getting a little bit farther out here into about 15 days on NASDAQ is about 21.66, up about nearly 5 points, about 4 3/4 points on the week. Let's look at the skew. Let's see, the puts last week were where all the action was, 20.1% rich to the at the money. So you already have a pretty lofty level of vol. Then you're paying an additional 20% on top of that, listeners, to get those 25 delta puts. This week, that's come in a little bit. It's down about 3 points to 17.1%. The calls last week, 13.6% cheap. This week, 10.8% cheap. It's interesting stuff. The puts still bid, but not quite as bid as what they were this time last week. And in terms of the action, what was the number one trade out there? I said we're at about a 15,845 when we kicked off the show. These 16,000 puts going out tomorrow, listeners, doing about 1,000 contracts. That was kind of the big dog for the week. Let's see, anything else? 15,500 puts going up in the week 3 Jan contract, also doing almost 1,000 contract, about 900 this week as well. Nothing even breaking 1,000 out here, even though nearly 100,000 contracts went up this week. So kind of scattershot paper here in the NASDAQ. Mr. Rhoads, anything catching your eye out there in the NASDAQ paper this week, sir?
More and more, we're seeing a lot of volume in the NASDAQ index options and in the options on the futures, with the options that just have a day or two left to expiration. And I've already figured out a couple of systematic ways to take advantage of that with overnight trades. I think I'm on to something where you sell a credit spread about a half hour into the traditional day on expiration day, and you've got a really nice chance of keeping that premium. I'm halfway through the work on that, and I think I've found something. So, and it's specific to the NASDAQ arena. So next time you have me on, I'll report back on it a bit more. But you really do see an awful lot of paper opening up on the expiration day. And it's I think it's a slight mispricing of the time value when there's just hours left and people are figuring out ways to take advantage of it.
Interesting, sir. We got time for one more product. Where should we hang our hat next, sir? Or do you surrender yet again?
I'm going to surrender yet again.
I had a feeling. You know what? I'm going to throw a wrench in the works. I had it up earlier. I don't think we talked about it really formally. I mean, I mentioned it a few times. It was one of my surprise areas on the show last year. We didn't really get a chance to do a full breakdown of it many times because it wasn't always a big options player. But that is starting to change, and it is our number one mover and shaker to the light side this week, listeners. So to find out what it is, we have to go off into the ags.
It's time to get our hands dirty exploring the latest options trades and trends in corn, wheat, soybeans, and more. It's time to talk ags.
All right, listeners, you may be thinking, he's going to talk about soybeans or soybean oil or KC wheat or SRW wheat. They're all moving and shaking this week, but no. I'm going to go to the number one spot on the light side this week. It's dairy. Dare I say it, Class 3 milk, listeners. And again, it's no euro dollars. It's not even a NASDAQ 100 or a Russell 2000 or even like a silver. But it's doing more paper than it ever did before. Coming into Showtime, 5,500 contracts out there in Class 3 milk. This has kind of been an interesting area to watch for a while now. We've seen increasing volatility in dairy, increasing price action, and increasing options flow. So I'm hoping that this might be an area we get to come back to more, just to get outside the norm a little bit. I love talking all the other products you talk about, the energies and the metals and the rates and the equities and all that stuff. But it's fun to also get into some of the more esoteric contracts. And it's nice when they oblige us and do some paper. Lumber moves every week almost, except for this week. No options paper. Oats, nothing really going on. Bitcoin, not a ton of options. But here, we can actually sink our teeth into over 5,000 contracts. By the way, if you are wondering, where the heck is Class 3 milk trading right now? It's at about a 20.5 in that front future, listeners, 2040, up about 1.8% this week. So obviously a lot of that run, 11.5%, came on the tail end of last week there since our last show. And in terms of where the action was this week, all that 5,500 contracts, about 15% of it coming in the Feb contract. So let's go head out there. If you're wondering, what is the vol in Class 3 milk? It's looking like a rich equity right now, almost a 27, about 26.83, off a little more than 3/4 of a point. So it's looking kind of like your RVX level out there or something along those lines. In terms of skew, last week the puts were a little bit bid to the at the money, not much. They were mostly flat. This week getting more of a bid, about 2.3% bid to the at the money. The calls last week had a bid, 2.3% rich. That bid has pretty much come in. So the calls and the puts have pretty much flip-flopped. The calls were 2.3% bid last week, and the puts were negligible. This week, the puts are 2.3% bid, and the calls are negligible. If you're wondering what is the most action-packed contract out here, listeners, at all 5,500, we actually have a bit of a tie across the board. A bunch of things doing about 100 contracts each. So it's a bit of a tie between the 21 puts in February doing about 102 of those bad boys. Also, looks like the actual number one are the 18 puts going out in October here that have 111. And also the 18 puts in November doing 110. So maybe a bit of a roll. 100 lot of the 18 put roll in all things fluid milk towards the end of the year. A lot of 100 lots. 21 calls, also pretty active out there in May, doing about 107. So a lot of 100 lots going up this week, Mr. Rhoads. I know this is not a product area you watch a lot, but it seems like it's going to be on our radar more going forward. People slinging 100 lots out here. That's more than you could say for lumber, sir, which moves a ton. So what are your thoughts on the resurgence, perhaps, of dairy and dairy vol in 2022, sir?
It looks to me like like the dairy guys are trying to lock in some higher prices. That's all I can tell you. And I was looking at the Class 4 product just to see how it trades, and it's very similar. Lots of puts going out into late next year. So they're locking in that higher dairy price.
Oh, don't even get me started on Class 4 milk, sir. Another crazy stock.
That's the one that we left for. It's a little cheaper, so that's the one we left for Santa.
That one has about half the paper listeners, about 2,100 contracts out there. That's Class 4 milk, yes. There we go. So, yeah, a little bit less paper out there. But you add those two together, you're getting some paper out there, which is, again, some of these products, when we first started doing this show, you could really count on one hand how much paper they were doing. So it's nice to see a resurgence. Again, it's no Eurodollars or E-mini, but it's on the way. Speaking of on the way, listeners, we are on the way into your segment. It is time for the Futures Options Feedback.
It's time for your questions, comments, and insights. It's time for Futures Options Feedback. Submit your questions at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, stocktwits.com/optionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com. You can also submit your feedback via our Options Insider Radio Network mobile app, available for iOS, Android, and Kindle Fire devices. You can even ask your questions live via our Mixlr chat room. So grab the Mixlr app or just search for Options Insider at Mixlr.com. That's Mixlr.com.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Futures Options Feedback segment. It's actually opportune timing that you join us today, Mr. Rhoads, because we have a question of the week right now that is, dare I say it, right up your alley. It is time for our annual Guess That VIX contest, listeners. And so to kick off the new year, we asked you, give us your prediction for where VIX will close at the end of the year. We gave you 4 general ranges, and of course, that's where our question of the week will fall for this week. But in order to enter the actual contest, see if you can win a fabulous prize, you have to give us a specific prediction. But the 4 ranges we gave you were very elevated, so north of 25, somewhat elevated, so the 20 to roughly 25 range, frothy, so the 15 to roughly 20 range, or quiet, aka below 15. Mr. Rhoads, if you have a vote for where it will close the end of the year, have at it. And then B, more importantly, what do you think our audience is voting for, sir?
I think I'm going to doom it and say below 15. And I think your audience is probably saying mid-range.
So 15 to 20?
15, 20, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You actually sound a lot like Uncle Mike on our last show. He guessed the exact same thing pretty much, except he said everyone was going to say quiet. And you are correct with your audience guess. They are in the frothy range right now of 41.7% saying the 15 to 1999 range, and then 30.6% saying below 15, and then 22.2% saying the 20 to 25 range, and only 5.6%, Mr. Rhoads, saying we're going to end this year where we began last year, north of 25, sir. What do you say to those results?
I think I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we get a couple of instances of VIX over 30 this coming year, but I think things will start to calm down as we get toward the end of the year. So, I think that's where the 15-ish guess comes from right there. I don't think that's going to be near the average for the year, but I think that's going to be kind of where we finish.
Well, if past is prologue, last year we saw our apex for VIX at the end of January, right around a 37, and then we never saw those levels again for the rest of the year, sir. So,
yeah, I think it's first half, and then things start to we get through some of the concerns that people have about the economy and the markets.
Well, so far, we're already through January 6th, sir, and no one has stormed the Capitol yet. So I guess we're good this year.
Oh, is that today?
That is today.
I didn't realize that was the anniversary.
Doesn't that seem like it was a lifetime ago, not exactly a year ago?
I remember getting out of there the second the tear gas started going.
Were you down there in D.C. at that time?
I was not down there.
Oh, I was going to say. I did not realize.
I suddenly get just eviscerated on Twitter. I know a couple of people that were there, but I was not, and actually did not know what was going on at the Capitol. They were where the other people had been assembling. So,
knowing you as I do, I think I probably would have seen a tweet or two from you of photos of that event if you were at said event last year, sir.
I would have been in my Joker outfit running around with Nancy Pelosi.
You would have had the headdress. You would have been running through the Capitol with the headdress on. That would have been you. And you would be talking to your lawyer right now, sir.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. That music means we come to the end of another epic journey through the world of all things futures, options. I want to thank my bronze medalist co-host here, Mr. Russell Rhoads. There you go. That's a new nickname for you, the bronze medalist. Came today, so what do you think?
He took the bronze. He was a double loser because he wasn't silver.
Well, it is that time of year, sir, so you're always looking at vol and everything else like that. So if you have any other thoughts or hints or ideas or predictions you want to leave our audience with for the coming year, could be in any asset class, could be involved, whatever you feel like, sir. Now is the time. The floor is yours.
Well, I love the NASDAQ, but I really do think this may be the year to avoid being tech-heavy in your portfolio. And unfortunately, both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ give you a lot of tech exposure. So not just because this program is sponsored by our good friends at FTSE Russell, but I would be saying if you're going to focus in on equities, maybe you want to look at small cap. They're still overdue for an outperformance. They started out last year looking like they were going to outperform and then gave it up. But then also maybe look at really quality stocks. So stocks that have a reputation of returning capital tend to hold up better in the kind of environment we're getting ready to go into.
It does seem
sticking within my wheelhouse there. And then I've also got a little bit of silver and gold in case we get more unexpected inflation and it actually works its way into the markets.
And, of course, the old Bitcoin, which all the kids' college funds are in, sir.
That's right. Well, the way they've been talking to me the past couple of days, I can cash it in and they can be on their own for college.
When are you making the big shift to, let's say, Shiba? Let's just dump all the Bitcoin right into Shiba. When's that happening, sir?
I don't even know what Shiba is. If I buy Shiba, that means it's the last person out there to buy it.
You missed the Shiba Inu train of 2021, sir? It's like a Doge. Think of it along those lines. How much Doge do you have?
I'm still working on my Nigerian Prince coin.
Oh, yes. Prince coin, I forgot. Somehow that episode didn't make it into our top 10, the Prince coin.
Yeah, I wonder why.
But you still managed to secure your bronze medal. Where will he fall in the top 10 next year, listeners? Will he make it? Will he get a medal? We shall find out there. In the meantime, of course, listeners, you want to check out everything he's got cooking, including his non-photos from the Capitol riots last year. Give him a follow on the old Twitters, at Russell Rhoads, 2 S's, 2 L's, RHOADS, all one word out there. Meanwhile, we're talking about small caps. You know where to go to learn more about all things small caps. It's FTSERussell.com, FTSERussell.com. Check out their COVID Impact Center, all the other cool stuff they have going on over there. A lot of action over there in the latter portion of the year in small caps, and now perhaps to kick off the new year. So an intriguing place to be hanging out. Give them a follow on the old Twitters as well. At FTSE Russell is the place to go. And you know where to go for all the reports we're talking about here throughout the show. You can run them anytime you want. If you want them to line up more with what we're talking about on the show, you can try to adjust those expiration dates a little bit so they come closer to where we are right now, middle of the day on Thursday, so you can see exactly what we were looking at. If not, run them whenever you want. You want to check Fluid Milk at 3 a.m. on Saturday? Have at it. No one judges here on the show. We just want you to listen and enjoy. And again, we're looking forward to a great year of TWIFO. Should be a fun one. And we'll see you back here next week, another episode of This Week in Futures Options.
This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world manage risks and seize opportunities. CME Group offers the deepest and most liquid options on futures across all asset classes, including interest rates, equity indexes, foreign exchange, energy, agriculture, and metals. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This Week in Futures Options is also brought to you by FTSE Russell, a leading global provider of benchmarks, analytics, and data solutions. Investors in the U.S. and around the world are using FTSE Russell indexes to benchmark their investment performance and create investment funds, ETFs, structured products, and index-based derivatives. Many Options Insider Radio Network listeners will be familiar with the Russell 2000 Index. Russell 2000 futures and options are currently trading on the Chicago Board Options Exchange and CME Group. For more information, please visit ftserussell.com, cboe.com, and cmegroup.com. This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute trading advice or the solicitation of purchases or sale of any futures or options. The rulebook of the applicable exchange should be consulted as the authoritative source on all current contract specifications. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.